Hey, welcome to Hell in the Hallway podcast with your host, Billy. The last time we talked a little bit about magnification of our traumas. Today we're going to talk about how that magnification leads to a shackling of our traumas. We become shackled by our traumas. Now, I don't have a set of real handcuffs, so let the jokes begin on that. So I use the hair tie to demonstrate what that shackling looks like. So when we magnify our traumas, we start looking for traumas everywhere, but what ends up happening, we become shackled by them as well. So we have to recognize, say for example, you were abandoned a lot as a child or a teenager or even in relationships. You are shackled by the concept of abandonment and you start to look for it everywhere. Let's say in your relationships, you are become hyper vigilant. Any action that he or she engages in starts to look a little bit like abandonment. And to be honest with you, it doesn't always have to be. The reason is we are so used to a certain way of responding to the world, we start to see it even when it even isn't even really there. I like to akin it to we take a piece of sand and we create a beach. It's not really there. So let's say, for example, that we want to set a room temperature at 72 degrees, right? So it's currently 60. It's a little chilly in there. You want to warm up, right? I get it. Me too. So you set the thermostat at 72. The heater kicks on. It's going to get to 72. It's not going to get to 75. It's not going to get to 80. And it's not going to drop to 60. Why won't it drop to 60? Because it is set at 72 degrees. It is so important to recognize that we do that as well with our internal barometers of our own self-worth. We start to believe that we have a lower sense of self-worth. We start to believe that people will walk away from us. We start believing we are less deserving of real love. So we start looking for abandonment even when it's not there. So it's so important that we pay attention to our inner dialogue and what our inner critic is saying to us, especially if we've been abandoned growing up. So if you magnify verbal abuse, you become shackled by anger and hostility in your relationships. Let's say you magnify physical, sexual, emotional, or verbal abuse, you can become shackled by fake love from individuals who have no intention or doing you any well. However, you don't have a real concept of what relationships look like. So the chaos becomes normal. We begin to normalize chaos. And it is so important to recognize that someone yelling at you, screaming at you, abusing you emotionally, verbally, physically, or sexually is not it's not symbolic of love. But if you're used to a history of being mistreated, if you're used to a history of being abandoned, you start looking for it because it is what's familiar. It is what becomes our old friend. And when we become familiar to stuff, we become attached to it. So there are many ways of working through these particular issues, right? You can utilize your spiritual world. If there are books, self-help books, there are groups, maybe friends or family that you find that are healthy who can help you process through this. I am always going to say counseling as a clinician. I'm a huge fan of someone walking through this process with you. It is a painful process. I don't deny it, but it's a necessary one. It's a necessary one so that way you don't have to maintain being shackled by the traumas of your lives. And remember, it is not always about the destination. It is mostly about revelation.